And we're here, baby. Show 99. Welcome to Wire to Wire Sports Podcast. I'm rocking the Permian Panthers, Booby Miles. Show 99. I'm your handsome host, Gene Walzak, the NFL genius. And to my right, I got the man, the myth, the legend. We're rolling on Shally time. Uncle Shally.
The more humble co-host than Gene.
Yes, very more. You're way more humble, way more. It's okay. To my left, I got Kent State's own, Cleveland's own, with the ugly backdrop, College Cottrell.
Hey, you're looking at your future college football champion. So,
listen. We'll talk about that tonight. I have my winner. You guys have yours. We have our playoff top six. We also have our quarterback list. We have our Mount Rushmore. We finally have New York. We have two lists for New York as a reminder, and then obviously we got You Got to Be Kidding Me, our first college football pick'em segment. I have 3 picks plus a super dog. I'm coming out the gate firing, boys. I'm going to sweep college and the NFL this year. Just humble. Humility is here. It's ready. Show 99. Let's get a
favorite time of the year. Humble Gene.
That's right. You can't get enough of me. All right, so let's get started. Before we talk about the quarterbacks, cut down day just happened. Let me ask you guys a question. Any cuts that really, really surprised you before we get into our quarterback list? A cut that was just, whoa.
The Leatherwood one for me was the one that was surprising. I agree with the decision that, if you don't think that he's a guy that is valuable to your football team, you have to get rid of him no matter how much you're paying him. Obviously, outside of the quarterback position, I feel like any guy on a rookie deal is essentially expendable. And, him only being there 1 year and he was a first-round pick last year, I mean, it's tough to see. It's tough to see all your first-round picks leave in the fashion if you're a Raiders fan, but that was the one that definitely caught me off guard.
I think
really caught me off guard. Yeah, Bill.
No, I was just saying, I think with Leatherwood, I think with him being a first-round pick, I think it was kind of a big name, like Cottrell said. We also saw him struggle as much as he did last year. And I think the biggest thing with him is that regime is not attached to him. They didn't draft him. You have a brand new coach in there now, brand new GM. I think it was easy to cut ties and just move on. So, it is a little weird to give up on, like Cottrell said, a first-round draft pick after 1 year. But he was really bad last year. We all agreed last year when it happened that, we thought it was a huge reach. So not super surprised.
Not a better way to start and show your team that it doesn't matter if you're drafted in the first round or the 7th round. Like, it doesn't matter where you're at. If you're not playing well, if you're not what we're looking for, we will remove you from that. So, I understand that from a coaching perspective. I actually expected it when I seen how poor of a camp and preseason he was having as a whole, kept coming back and forth with him having mistakes. The one that there's a few that stood out to me, but the one that really caught me by surprise was Marlon Mack. I thought Marlon Mack was battling for the #1 job over in Houston, and he cleared waivers and he signed back with the Texans practice squad today. But he got cut over Royce Freeman and
Damian Pierce?
No, Damian Pierce, Rex Burkhead. I almost said Danny Woodhead, bro. But Rex Burkhead. But Marlon Mack getting cut, I thought he was viably going for the starting job with Damian Pierce. And to find out he's 4th on that depth chart behind Royce Freeman, who has done nothing in the NFL, and Rex Burkhead, who's, older than me. I don't know. I just probably wouldn't have thought that was a cut that surprised me. Shall, did you have one that really surprised you?
No, I mean, if I had to lean anywhere, I would lean towards the Mac thing. We talked about him last night at our fantasy draft. He's got to have some of the worst luck in the world, man. He was a #1 back for a good Indianapolis Colts team. Blows out his Achilles. They draft Jonathan Taylor. Has his first year back is decent, and then Jonathan Taylor just becomes the guy. He gets let go from Indy, goes to Houston, and now he can't catch on there. Dude, the dude's, Gene's point, he's very serviceable. I mean, he's got 3,000-yard seasons under his belt. He's a good running back. I find it hard to believe that he can't be on somebody's roster to start the year. That's kind of nuts to me.
One in the comment, Dylan Reed said Kellen Mond. And and I actually had this conversation on East Coast Gridiron. I was talking to Dante in the comments. I think Kellen Mond, I could see that one coming a mile away too. And not saying he's not talented. You see that Cleveland claimed him off of waivers, which makes a lot of sense for their situation. But I could see that coming. He hasn't gotten along with two NFL head coaches now. He was obviously in the doghouse last year, and now with the new coaching regime, they didn't like him either. It could be an attitude issue. It could be a work ethic issue. It could be a lot of things. But I will say this: Kellen Mond didn't surprise me. Did surprise one of you guys?
Third round quarterback in a new regime. I don't think that's you don't have to hold him. You know, you're not tied to him. Kirk Cousins is as much as I don't think that his ceiling isn't much higher than what he already is. Kirk Cousins is a guy, age-wise and contract-wise, that you know you're going to have at least for the next couple of seasons. So you don't need Kellen Mond. He wasn't, anything valuable for what the Vikings had. So that didn't really surprise me either.
No, I mean, when you factor in too, I mean, when he got drafted, we all agreed that he went too soon. He went too high. Felt like Minnesota reached for him at that point. So I think he's panning out to be what most evaluators thought he was going to be. He was a 4th or 5th round, prospect that was a project, and that's what he is. Athleticism's there. It's great. I mean, he's got some of the tools and the utilities that he want, but to Gene's point, I mean, I don't, that this is 2 coaching regimes in a row now that he's apparently rubbed the wrong way right off the get-go. There was reports that came out when Zimmer was still there that he was in the doghouse immediately. So, I mean, it's, again, the NFL is a cutthroat business, man. If you don't show up and have the right attitude and the right work ethic, it's a culture, man. If you're not going to fit in the culture, you're not a superstar quarterback. They're not going to put up with your crap to a guy that's fighting to be 3rd string. They'll just let you go. It's nothing to them. So
I just remember the conversation that Mike Zimmer had about him in the press when they asked him, Are we going to see more Kellen Mond? He goes, I see him plenty in practice.
Yeah.
When he said that, he did not. It was not a glowing rendition for Kellen Mond. He's like, I see plenty of him.
Yeah. He's like, I think he said, I think he said something along the lines like, I've seen enough in practice. It was not a ringing endorsement whatsoever.
No. All right. Well, let's get into our quarterbacks list. I kind of wanted to start open up before we got into this list, because I'm telling you right now, my list is going to be nuts, and I know it's going to be nuts, and it's going to be, what's the right way to put it? It's going to come off as hypocritical to some of my previous comments. Okay. So, but I want to explain to you, this is not a quarterback list of the best 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. It's a projections list for what they're going to do in the 2022 NFL season. This is not the 10 quarterbacks I would take in order. This is how productive I think they're going to be in 2022. And I have to make that so obvious because I believe, even when I get to number 1, I don't think he's the best quarterback in the league. I think he's 5th, 6th. But with that being said, if his production is there, that's where he's going to be. So let's get it rolling. I get to go first. I love it, Dante. Thank you very much. Rocking on the 1s and 2s. What up to Sports Empire Network? Is our first show broadcasting through them. So if y'all listening through there, what's popping? Shout out to Freddie Henderson. But I get to get started. I love it. My number 10. I probably should say my honorable mention out loud because it's going to be like, when is he coming? When is he coming? The quarterback that's not on my list is back-to-back MVP Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is not my top 10 for this year. Freddie's got him 1. Look at this. I got him on my top 10 list. I think that losing the production of Devontae Adams is going to be a lot for him. And I think, I think that he'll be productive, but not top 10 productive. Yeah. I don't have him on my list, Freddie. Wait, what? My number 10.
So you think it's going debatably from, debatably 1 to not in the top 10 though, like all the way down that far?
Correct. is production this year? Yes. I think they're going to rely heavily on the running game with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, the short passing game. And I think Devontae Adams as a whole helped him a ton being that security blanket. I think they'll try to control clock and win games with defense and the run game this year. I wouldn't say regressing yet, but it will definitely be a huge step back. As well as my number 10. My number 10 might be higher on a lot of people's list. Also, my number 10 is Russell Wilson. I have Russell Wilson at 10, and I love Russ. Danger Russ, like Mr. Everything. But go into a new situation in Denver. He's going to have to learn those receivers, learn that playbook, learn that system. I don't think it's a bad thing to be number 10. There's a lot of quarterbacks that aren't on my list. So my number 10 is Russell Wilson. Danger Russ.
Here, I thought I was going to get crap for being prejudicial towards Aaron Rodgers because everybody knows I don't like him, having him lower on my list than I think a lot of people do. But now I feel better. I got 2 honorable mentions. Number 1, I think you're going to see flashes of what everybody is expecting this guy to be this year. I think he's going to have great games this year. I think he's going to have games where he struggles a little bit. I think you're going to see incredible throws. I think you're going to see bad throws. That being said, I think this is the last year this guy's not on this list. He's at a great training camp. He's got one of the best offensive minds in the game coaching him and Kyle Shanahan. I got Trey Lance right off my list. And I got him right alongside Kyler Murray, Gene's number 1. Well, not so much. He's fallen out of favor a little bit. But Kyler got his contract. I expect him, hopefully. Listen, man, I mean, I know we joke about him on the show a lot and all things considered, he's a talented kid. I don't think he's a bad kid. I think he has a lot of growing up to do, but he's talented. I think he has the ability to be a superstar in this league with the physical attributes that he has. He got his money now. It is the definition of put up or shut up time for Kyler Murray. So those guys were just outside my top 10. My top 10 this year is the benefactor of Aaron Rodgers not having Devontae Adams anymore. Going with Derek Carr this year. I think he's been very underappreciated the last few years in general. I think he's a top 10 quarterback. I have him number 10. I think Devontae Adams is going to change his world in Las Vegas. You have Devontae Adams now. You have Darren Waller, and you have Hunter Renfrow in the slot. I think they're going to pass the ball a lot this year. Short, maybe not always long, but more of a possession game. I think they're mixing the run. I think the Raiders are a very dangerous team this year. I think Derek Carr takes another step now that he has a legitimate number 1 weapon that's not a tight end. So I have him number 10 this year.
I actually don't have Kyler Murray on my list either.
I'm proud of you.
You could be proud. Listen to me. I am very upfront about my like if I see something and my eyes lead me the wrong way, I have no problem admitting mistake or admitting fault. I think Kyler Murray has all the talent in the world to be a top 5 NFL quarterback. With that being said, I do not think he has the right situation or mindset. So I'm going to blame it on both situation and his own mindset to be in the top 10 this year. And that's just my opinion. Cottrell, you're on the clock for 2.
I was going to say, you talk about, I did. You talk about situation. My number 10 is a guy who got put in the perfect situation last year, and he won a Super Bowl because of it. And that number 10 is Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford is obviously he's been a good quarterback. Going to Sean McVay and that Rams team, I think was obviously the best thing that ever happened to him because he just won a Super Bowl. But they get Cam Akers back this year. They added Allen Robinson. I think Matt Stafford is still going to have another good year. I just think there's some other QBs in the league that are going to have more productive years than what he had. And I think with Cam Akers coming back, they won't rely as much this upcoming year on Matt Stafford as they had to last year. My number 9 is the guy that Gene had at number 10, and that's Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's going to a new system there. You guys already saw how much I love Jerry Jeudy this upcoming season. I like Javonte Williams this year. I think Russell Wilson is going to be really special for that Broncos team. And I feel like you can't mention Russell Wilson at this point without saying Broncos country. Let's ride.
Let's ride.
Let's ride. Number 9 for me. I have one of the guys that Cottrell just mentioned, Matt Stafford. I think a lot of people were worried about him possibly taking a step back. with OBJ being a free agent and, with the injuries, so forth and so on. And they went out and got Allen Robinson. People are sleeping on Allen Robinson this year. Everybody wants to talk about Cooper Kupp. Me and Gene talk about him a lot. Obviously he was a Penn State guy. He's never played on a team with a good quarterback. And I'll reiterate that again. Allen Robinson has never played on a team with an elite quarterback through college and the pros, nowhere. He is, as long as he has chemistry with Matthew Stafford, Allen Robinson's primed for a big year. I do agree a little bit with Cottrell. If Cam Akers could stay healthy, I think this team's a little bit more balanced than it was last year. But Sean McVay will have weapons all over the place like he does. Tyler Higbee is not a bad tight end by any means, but they're going to be they're going to be a good offense. I think we'd all be lying saying, I don't think Matt Stafford's in his prime anymore, but he's a very good, and I think he's a more mature quarterback than he was, say, 5 years ago. You saw it last year winning the Super Bowl. I still think he has a top 10 year with the weapons he has and the way that offense is going to put up points. So I have him number 9 on my list.
Well, I think Matt Stafford definitely has a top 10 year because I have him number 9. Matt Stafford is adding Allen Robinson. He is probably going to get Odell Beckham Jr. back in October. I think they'll end up signing him mid-season. They're going to have a wide receiver trio there. I don't think that he takes a step back unless his elbow is an issue. And I hope his elbow doesn't become an issue. I don't know how he would. You have Cooper Kupp, the guy that won the Triple Crown. You add Allen Robinson and Odell Beckham Jr., I believe, comes back. There's no question in the world that Matt Stafford doesn't finish top 10 unless it's his elbow. My number 8 is pretty simple. You already mentioned him, Bill. I got Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr with Darren Waller, Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, they're going to throw the ball a lot. And in that division, you're going to see the Raiders. Listen, nothing against them, but there's no way you could have Derek Carr. They'll be throwing from behind. They're going to be behind a lot. And I think what's end up going to happen when you play against teams like the Chiefs, teams like the Chargers, teams like the Broncos, they're going to be in shootouts. Derek Carr's going to throw the ball over 30 times almost every game this year. No doubt in my mind. So his production will be number 8. And I do want to respond to Freddie Henderson. He said, wait, you have Stafford in your top 10, but not Aaron Rodgers. Let me ask you a question, Freddie, and I'd like you to answer. And not saying that Aaron Rodgers is not a stud. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's top 5 of all time on my list. But would you rather be throwing the ball in a dome to Allen Robinson, Cooper Kupp, and potentially OBJ, or throwing the ball in the frozen tundra to Alan Lazard, the ghost of Sammy Watkins, and preseason Jerry Rice and Romeo Doubs? I'd rather have Matt Stafford right now. If you put Matt Stafford in LA, different story. He's in my top 5, 100%. Bill?
Number 8 for me, I have a guy that's already been mentioned as well, Russell Wilson. I think Russell Wilson's going to a better situation than he was in Seattle. I think they have a better offensive line. I know that's a little crazy when considering he left Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf in Seattle. However, I think the group of receivers they have Javonte Henderson, and they still have Melvin Gordon as a backup, along with Cortland Sutton, KJ Hamler, and, of course, Jerry Jeudy, who I also agree with Gene, I think has a massive year this year. This is the best possible setup for him. I think he's going to be a little bit rejuvenated. I don't think he's going to run for his life as much. I think that offense is going to click. Maybe not the first couple of weeks, but it's going to take a little bit of time. But to your point as well, the AFC West is going to be crazy. It's probably going to be the most fun division to watch this year in football, with just the absolute amount of offensive talent that every team possesses out there. So I think he's a good year. I think he puts up big numbers. I really do. I think he's got, Cortland Sutton's more of a possession guy. Jerry Jeudy, we know, can run literally anything on the tree and run it well. And then you got Hamler running on the slot that can blow the top off if he wants to, or work underneath. So I think Russell Wilson has a very good year, and kind of does Russ things.
All right. So
Anthony Price asked a question. He says, "Is a top 10 from last year's stats?" No, this is our projections for 2022 of what we think their production would be. What's up, Key? Key Williams in the chat. Appreciate y'all. Okay, Control. My bad.
My number 8 is a guy who both of you already had on your list, and that's Derek Carr. I think we all have the same 3 10, 9, and 8 in different orders, but they're the same 3 quarterbacks. You guys mentioned Derek Carr already pretty much at length, so not too much to say there. I think there's a good possibility that Raiders team makes the playoffs, and we'll get into it more in our preview show next week. But as crazy as it sounds, I think there's a possibility that all 4 teams in that AFC West division gets in the playoffs. Like I just believe they have that much talent that they're going to beat up on everybody else and then just splitting across the board everywhere. I think there's a possibility that all 4 of those teams make the playoffs. And if the Raiders do make the playoffs, a large part of that will be because Derek Carr's arm is leading them to victory. My number 7 is a guy who I'm always so high on, and former MVP, and that's Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson is going to get the gang healthy again this year. You got J.K. Dobbins coming back. I think Rashad Bateman is going to take a step this upcoming year, and he's going to be the receiver 1 for that team. And, of course, his favorite target in Mark Andrews is going to be there, and he's going to be dangerous. So I think Lamar Jackson and that Ravens team, them fully healthy, I mean, I think that the sky's the limit for them. So got Lamar Jackson here at number 7.
I love this. I can't wait, man. Seeing what you go ahead, Bill.
Number 7, I have Lamar Jackson as well. It was crazy, I was, making this list and really, I don't want to say struggling, but it really just, I was like, I really can't put him any higher than this. And I have a ton of respect for Lamar. I give him all the credit in the world for doing what he's doing this year, going out, betting on himself, betting that he's going to stay healthy. And I will tell you, Baltimore screwed this up pretty bad. If he has a great year, leads them another deep playoff run, to Cottrell's point, I think if they stay healthy with everybody they have coming back that had, serious to season-ending injuries last year on both sides of the ball, I think Baltimore's a dark horse to come out of the AFC. Lamar Jackson's going to get paid. And I think Baltimore misplayed this pretty badly. But that being said, with Cottrell, J.K. Dobbins, who I've been extremely high on since he came into the league, he was one of those guys 2 years ago I said, kind of like I said with Najee last year, he was a perfect person to be drafted by that organization. He's a Baltimore Raven. He is that type of guy. I hate giving him a compliment because he's a freaking bum from Ohio State, but he's very good. I love him as a football player. And I think Bateman takes a step as well. I think Bateman came into camp healthy this year, doesn't have any nagging injuries to worry about. And he's been able to practice with Jackson the whole time. He missed time last year in camp, and then Jackson got hurt after that. So I think they've really been able to gel now. I think Lamar has a great year, and, I'm sure he'll be somewhere in the MVP conversation when it's all said and done.
Y'all guys know I'm a gambling man, right? Like I love betting. I love gambling. I love standing hard on my takes, and this is one of them. The chips are all in for me, man. I'm all in on my number 7. That's Trey Lance. I got Trey Lance number 7. I think he's in the perfect situation. Kyle Shanahan is going to get Brandon Ayuk down the field, George Kittle across the middle, Deebo Samuel as your possession receiver. I have the San Francisco 49ers making it to the Super Bowl in the NFC. I've already said that. I'm going to say it again. And if in order for them to make the Super Bowl, Trey Lance has to be exactly what I think he's going to be. And I don't mind being crazy and on my ledge here, but I love me some Trey Lance. I have him number 7. Do not be surprised when this man goes for 375 and 3 touchdowns opening week versus Chicago. Just don't be surprised when it happens. My number 6, and it's always fun when I have this guy higher than Cottrell does, because Cottrell's the biggest Lamar Jackson fan there is. And I got Lamar Jackson number 6. I love me some Lamar Jackson this year. You want to talk about a guy that bet on himself, fully healthy. That Ravens team had so many injuries last year, and they were still in the midst of a playoff chase until Lamar Jackson got hurt. I think Lamar Jackson runs for over 1,000, throws for over 3,500, and I think Rashad Bateman takes a huge step. Yes, I want to make a comment. Anthony Price says Bateman taking a step where? As a blocking wide receiver? Well, yes, he does block. So let's take that into effect. Too. But I'm going to tell you what else he does. He caught 53 receptions, missing the first 4 games of the year in his rookie year with a hamstring issue. Rashad Bateman is a strong possession receiver that has good hands, that is perfect for what Lamar Jackson likes to do. I think Rashad Bateman takes a huge step, and Lamar Jackson lands at number 6.
This is where I started to struggle with my list. I went, I think some of these guys to some degree are interchangeable, and you're getting into all. I mean, not that Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, those guys aren't big names, but you're kind of getting into MVP candidates and all-timers and all that kind of good stuff here. I almost set 7 different lists to Dante, and I almost changed this today, and I decided just to stick with it. Number 6, I'm gonna reiterate this by saying what Gene said earlier. I don't think he's the 6th best quarterback in the league. I just think the 5 guys in front of him are going to have better numbers, and that's strictly what it came down to. He's definitely not. I definitely like this guy way more than being 6th on my list. I have Joe Burrow from Cincinnati. I don't know if you could pick another guy. I mean, you can make arguments for guys, but the guy's demeanor and his attitude and his leadership alone, not even counting his physical abilities on the football field, I don't know if you could sell me a better quarterback to start a franchise around than Joe Burrow. Led a team to a Super Bowl last year. Pretty much everybody back. Boyd, Higgins, and of course Jamar Chase. I think he has another great year. I don't have anything bad or negative to say about him being on 6th, other than I just think the 5 guys in front of him are going to put better numbers up. That's it. I love Joe Burrow, but I have 6.
I got to reply to David Michael Senklo. Hey, my man, I'm a gambling man. We can bet whatever you want. He said Trey Lance is going to lose his job by week 6. Man, we can put whatever you want on that, bro. Anything you want. I'm a gambling man. I'm telling you right now, Kyle Shanahan does not leap up and get this guy at number 3, have him sit a whole year to learn the offense, and then make him the unquestioned starter over Jimmy Garoppolo, who was under contract and just got them to the NFC Championship game for nothing. You want to talk about Kyle Shanahan, a guy that got Matt Ryan an MVP trophy. I'm telling you, when Trey Lance is balling out of control, I want you to come back and apologize to me for that comment. And Shane Duncan, I've already mentioned, Aaron Rodgers is not on my list. No higher. Alan Lazard, Sammy Watkins, Romeo Dubes. Yeah, I'll pass.
The one thing that I will mention, Gene, I'm not on your branch with you, but
it's all right.
I do think Trey Lance is gonna be just fine in that system. The one thing that kind of gives me a little cause to pause is we heard all this talk about the 49ers potentially releasing Jimmy G, trying to trade him, and then they just restructured his deal to make him the highest paid backup, not named Sam Darnold. So I think that gives me a little reason to be a little bit worried about him. But talent-wise and system-wise, I think he has all the opportunity in the world. You see a little bit more.
You want to understand why they did that? Would you like me to explain to you why they did that? I can help you.
Oh,
the reason they made him the most high, because they didn't want to cut him because of his value. They had to cut him by the 30th, or they had to fully pay that contract that they were going to pay. And in order for Jimmy G to agree to that contract, that's the stipulations in which they needed to agree to. This has nothing to do with Trey Lance. It has everything to do with them trying to get value for Jimmy Garoppolo if a starter goes down, and restructuring that contract to make it work for them so they didn't have to release him. Just to be clear, they don't want Jimmy Garoppolo going to the Seattle Seahawks. They want to be able to get value for him. That's why they did it.
I mean, he has a no trade clause in there, so he kind of gets to dictate a little bit where he goes if he gets traded anywhere.
Which is why they did it.
My number 6 is a guy who you guys know how high I am on this guy. I mean, last year I picked him to be the MVP, and he was. That guy's Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is in a situation. We talk about his threats everywhere. Talent-wise, I mean, this is the most talented quarterback to ever play the quarterback position. Obviously, I know he's not the GOAT. I'm not gonna ever go there, but thrower of the football, I think for my money, he's the best ever. And I just think that he got his money now, and there's a situation where with Matt LaFleur, there's nothing to prove anymore. You know, he's got his money, and he doesn't have to prove it to the Packers that he's this guy and they're stuck with Jordan Love. he's got $50 million and no true number one receiver. So I just think he falls off a little bit at number 6. But if they somehow get him a weapon during the year, of course, he's going to be a little bit higher. My number 5 is the GOAT. I talked about Aaron being the best passer of the football. My number 5 is the real GOAT. The guy with 7 rings, and he always finds a way to come out on top. Came out of retirement, and I think he's going to be the 5th best quarterback in football. That's Tom Brady.
Number
Freddie,
5.
I have an open welcome for you, brother. You can come on the show anytime you want to. Go ahead.
Number 5 for me, I have the guy that bitches about everything, the egomaniac himself, Aaron Rodgers. Listen, we've all talked ad nauseam about him losing Devontae Adams and how that's going to hurt. You know, as much as I can't stand him as a human, I'm not going to take that away from him, because if you took anybody's number 1 target away, it's going to hurt them. So I'm not going to put that on Aaron Rodgers. But I still think he's a good year. I think he'll have a great regular season. I think he'll lead Green Bay to the playoffs, and I think maybe he struggles there. Once you're playing against elite defenses that could take some things away. But I don't think he's in a bad year. I have number 5 because, like I said, I think he's definitely going to regress losing Adams. I didn't have him all the way off my list like Gene did. I wish I did because I can't stand him. But number 5 for me. But I still think he has a good year.
Number 5 for me is the quarterback. If I was starting a franchise, I would take this man number 1 in the NFL right now, and it's Joe Burrow. I got Joe Burrow number 5, and I think Joe Burrow I think he's the 5th most productive. When you play in Cincinnati against defenses like Baltimore, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh, and that's 6 of your games, the production level won't be as high as the top 4, in my personal opinion. But there's nobody this young that I'd rather go to war with than Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is a winner, a leader, and he's proven it time and time again. I can't say enough good things about him, and he's got a receiving cast that complements him perfectly. You have T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Tyler Boyd is one of the best slot receivers in football. And I got news for you. Look out for Hayden Hurst to be a good tight end this year. Former first-round draft pick finally finds a home in a situation I think is meant for him. So Joe Burrow is my number 5. Number 4, and I hate putting him number 4. I really do. But it's the GOAT, Tom Brady. Tom Brady is walking into a situation this year with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin coming off injury, Russell Gage, Julio Jones, Leonard Fournette in the backfield. They're primed to make a Super Bowl run. I actually have the GOAT and Tom Brady losing in the NFC Championship game to Trey Lance in San Francisco. A little foreshadowing for you. But I think Tom Brady's going to kill it this year. I think there's no chance he doesn't throw for 40 touchdowns. I think he's one of the smartest quarterbacks in the history of the NFL, and he knows where the ball's going to have to be. I think the only thing that drops him down just a slight bit is he has 2 centers that are already out for basically the season. His offensive line is a little bit weary right now, so I have Tom Brady, number 4.
Number 4 for me, I also have my guy, Michigan's own, the GOAT himself, Tom Brady. Gene just said a lot of things I was going to say. His receiving core is second to none, assuming Chris Godwin's healthy. If you have a healthy Julio Jones as your 3rd or 4th option with Leonard Fournette in the backfield, like Gene said, the dude is a master at picking apart defenses, knowing pre-snap exactly where the ball is going to go, putting the ball where it needs to be, giving his receivers, chances to succeed. We've seen it forever. The dude's got every accolade that there is in the book. I think he has a great year. I agree with Gene as well. I think he was over 40 touchdowns. I looked at their schedule a little bit. The only reason I'm number 4 is obviously he's going to play New Orleans twice, which has kind of been his, thorn in his side per se. They play against him very well and shut him down. He doesn't have big games against New Orleans. He's got a couple other tough games on his schedule. And I just think the 3 guys ahead of him, 2 of which are in the AFC West, are, we've already said it's going to be shootout city all year. I think you're going to have monster numbers from my top 3. But I have him 4. I think he has another great year. It's crazy to think a guy that's going to turn 46 is going to throw for over 40 touchdowns and probably be close to 5,000 yards again. It's just insanity. There's not much else you could say about the guy. He's done everything, won everything, and he's the GOAT, number 4.
So I will say I'm loving both of your lists so far because it means that we have the same top three. My number 4 is Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, you guys have already mentioned. I think he's in a situation where he has three, legit receivers that can go over 1,000 yards. And, Cincinnati went out and spent money and bulked up that offensive line, and they're going to be able to protect Joe back there. And he's going to have more time in the pocket to deliver dimes to the T. Higgins and Jamar Chases and Tyler Boyds of the world. So I think Joe Burrow has a phenomenal year, and we're probably going to be talking about him in the MVP race when it's all said and done. My number 3, this is where you got to get bold, man. My number 3 is a guy who's won a Super Bowl. He's won an MVP award. He's the flashiest guy in football, and that's Patrick Mahomes. This isn't a talent thing. This isn't, anything close to that. Patrick Mahomes is one of, if not the most talented quarterback in the league as of right now. But he's in a situation where he lost his true number 1 receiver, and they replaced him with Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Juju Smith-Schuster. Not saying those aren't going to be decent replacements for them, but you don't just replace a guy like Tyreek Hill seamlessly. So the other 2 guys that I have ahead of him, I just think are going to have slightly better years.
So the number 1 pick for me was a little bit easier. Where to put these next 2 guys is what I struggled with. Because the guy I'm about to say, I actually think is probably going to win the MVP this year. The reason I have him number 3 is I think Mahomes, who I'm going to have later, just has better numbers because I think Kansas City is going to be behind more. I like the Chargers defense more. Number 3, I have Justin Herbert. I think he's going to have a great year. If I'm picking an MVP right now, I'm picking Justin Herbert. But I think their defense is way better than Kansas City's. I don't think they're going to have to throw the ball as much. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to be in games where he's going to throw the ball 55 times, a lot. And I don't think Justin Herbert's going to have to do that as much. But the dude is a prototypical quarterback. I remember watching the game against the Raiders last year at the end of the year, watching it live with Gene, not in person, but we were texting back and forth. And I just remember every tough situation they got in. I was like, we're like, the game's over here. The game's over here. And he was just throwing 20-yard strikes on 4th and 15, just through zones and just right on the money. It's just the kid's got so much talent, and I think he's just getting better. I think the trajectory that him and Joe Burrow are on, that draft class, quarterback-wise, is going to be talked about for a long time. But I think Justin Herbert has an amazing year. Like I said, I think he's probably my MVP pick. We'll do those next week, but I have a number 3.
If he's your MVP pick, he should be your number 1, bro.
Listen,
I don't mind. I will be bold with mine. The most valuable player in the league should be number 1. But number 3 for me is the same number 3 as Cottrell. I got Patty Mahomes. I think Patrick Mahomes finishes 3rd, and I think he finishes 3rd because, listen, when you don't have to cheat at taking the top off a defense, I get it. They added speed, Valdez-Scantling, Juju Smith-Schuster, Sky Moore. These guys are all going to be good. I think Mecole Hardman is awful, if I'm being honest. I've heard so many people hyping him up. There's a reason they added 3 wide receivers around him. But I think Patrick Mahomes regresses a little bit as far as his overall numbers. I think Juju has a decent year. I think Travis Kelce will get a lot of checkdowns. And I really think CEH breaks out a little bit in the running back room. I think they run the ball a little bit more. I think they possess the ball a little bit different. So my number 3 is Patrick Mahomes. My number 2 is Josh Allen. Let's make this very clear. Josh Allen is going to do tremendous things. You've heard me say this before. I think this year, nobody circles the wagon like the Buffalo Bills. And Buffalo goes on to win this year's Super Bowl. I think they're primed for it. You want to talk about a receiving core that's perfect for Josh Allen? You got Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Isaiah McKenzie, who's very underrated. You're talking about a slot receiver there's probably 97 speed. Guy's unbelievable, giving you Madden statistics. I'm kidding. But I think Josh Allen balls out of control. And the one thing you'll notice about these top 3 quarterbacks is they have no real run game. Period. None. Like their run game is consistent of a receiver that plays in the backfield. You got to can catch the ball out of the backfield. There's no bell cow back there. There's no workhorse back there. Devin Singletary, CEH, and Austin Eckler aren't going to be here between the tackles, 23 carry guys. So all three of these teams are going to be airing it out all year. So my number 2, I got Josh Allen.
Number 2, foreshadowed this a little bit, obviously, but I have Patrick Mahomes, number 2. I think strictly on a numbers basis, I think his yards and things like that are going to be through the roof. Because, like I said, I think they're going to be high, and I think they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. I do agree if CEH can stay a little bit healthy. I think there's times where they will try to run the ball. I don't want to say take the air out of the ball, but that's also not his. It's also not his MO. Andy Reid loves to throw the ball. I mean, we saw that forever when he was here. I think he's going to have great numbers. I don't know how good Kansas City is going to be or the overall, prospects of the team. I think they make the playoffs maybe. Haven't really thought about it a ton yet, but I think way more responsibility falls on Patrick Mahomes this year than it has in the past because of the loss of Tyreek Hill. Obviously, Kelsey will get his; he always does. But it's going to be a little bit of a different look for KC this year. I think the offense is going to operate a little bit differently. To Gene's point, it's not going to be a lot of the top, over the top. I think it's going to be a little bit more possession. So I think at the end of the year, Mahomes, I don't want to say the words inflated, but I think his numbers are a little bit higher than maybe necessarily what's going on the field. But I still have him number 2. He's just got so much talent. It's just hard to not put him 2. But that's where I have him, for wrong or right.
Yeah,
interesting enough, Gene. I actually fully agree with you. I'm going with Josh Allen as my number 2 here. And I really feel like Josh Allen is obviously, if you're a top 2 quarterback, you're going to be right in the thick of it for MVP. And I think this is where Josh Allen is going to be. I think at the end of the season, we may have legitimate conversations about, is Josh Allen the best quarterback in football? Like I think there's going to be debates about that afterwards. But for me this year, as a guy who I don't think is the best quarterback in football, but I think he's going to have the best statistical year, that's Justin Herbert. I got Justin Herbert winning MVP, and that's why I put him number 1. I think Justin Herbert is in a perfect situation with the Los Angeles Chargers. Obviously, he was in the same system last year with Brandon Staley, but I think this following year, another year with Keenan Allen, another year with Mike Williams, another year with Josh Palmer. Like I think this is a perfect situation for Justin Herbert, and him being in that AFC West division where everyone is just going to be tossing the ball all over the yard. I think it plays perfect for him, and he gets to play in the dome at least half the year. So I'm going with Justin Herbert to win the MVP award, and he's my number 1 quarterback in football this upcoming year.
Number 1 for me is the guy that I had number 2 last year, barely behind Patrick Mahomes. Guy you guys have already talked about, Josh Allen. I think you're seeing the steady progression of where he was, say, 3 years ago versus where he is now. You're seeing him take these big steps every year, getting better and better and better. And I don't think he plateaus at all this year. I think he continues to get better. We all saw what he did when he went to Kansas City last year and had that game that caused all the drama with the overtime rules and every other thing. But he continues to win. I think Buffalo continues to get better. And again, I think statistically he probably has the best year out of any of the quarterbacks. That's why I have him number 1.
My number 1 is who I think is going to win the MVP. I think the guy throws for 5,600 yards this year, 50 touchdowns. It's Justin Herbert. I think Justin Herbert's going to sling the ball over the yard, and with no real running back behind him. Austin Eckler, once again, receiving back, 70 receptions out of the backfield. Mike Williams, your big, deep threat. Keenan Allen, your possession guy. And I think an emergence comes from Joshua Palmer in the slot. I think Josh Palmer's going to have a great year for the Chargers. I think the Chargers are going to have to throw the ball a ton. You're not going to be in those blowout games. You're playing against Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, and Derek Carr. You're going to see a lot of 42-35 games. And, when Justin Herbert looked his best, we're week 18 versus the Raiders, when every single time there was a 3rd and 16 and me and Bill were like, this is it. And then he throws a seed 22 yards downfield that gets brought in. Justin Herbert has all the arm talent. He reminds me so much of a young Peyton Manning in the way he throws the football. I think that he's absolutely a stud. And I got Justin Herbert number 1. But let me be clear. I want to say this again because I have a lot of comments over here. People heated, commenting back and forth. This is my projections list for 2022. If you asked me who the best 5 quarterbacks in the NFL are, and I could pick them for 1 year, I would easily tell you Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers. Then I go into Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. But this is not what this is. This is a projections list. And if you look as you go up, and somebody said something earlier, who's Trey Lance's receivers? I don't know if you've noticed, Deebo Samuel was a top 3 receiver last year. George Kittle's a top 3 tight end. And Brandon Ayuk was a first-round draft pick that is emerging into a deep threat on that team. You watch what Kyle Shanahan does this year. I am all in on Trey Lance. And once again, last person, David Michael Senklo. Yes, man, 100%. I thought that Carson Wentz would have a great year last year. I've been wrong about a few things before, and I will literally stand on those. But if we're being honest, I've been right a lot more than I've been wrong. And all of our lists show it. I got the clips. We got everything to back that up. So you can give me one bad take. I would like to see your top 10, sir. Give me your top 10 from last year for what you did. Give me your top 10 projection list, and we'll go side by side, and we'll project it together. But if you think Trey Lance can get benched by week 6, you are sadly mistaken, my friend.
I don't think you ever said Carson Wentz is an MVP candidate, did you?
Oh, he did.
I said he could get MVP votes last year in the preseason when he was on Indianapolis. I thought the situation with Frank Wright would be perfect for him. Then he had the injury that happened where his foot, where he missed half a training camp. And in the middle of the season, he looked great. He fell on his face last year, and now he's a Washington Commander. So I actively root against him. So I have no problem with that. You're in our division. You're against us. I actively root against you, period. By the way, I still think he has somewhat of a bounce back year in Washington with Terry McLaurin and Josh Doxson. He did a bad last 2 games.
He did. The defense had that defense was, we went over before. Statistically, didn't have what they're supposed to have. I'm not saying he's great. He had a horrible. Listen, if you go to if you leave Jacksonville and you lose, that's on you. Like I
think that's where you got to leave it at, though.
That's it. No.
Yeah.
He's top 12 in almost all the categories. All I'm saying is he didn't have a bad year. That's all I'm saying.
18th best quarterback last year, statistically. If you're breaking down by different metrics. But any last comments on this quarterback list? Look, you got Aaron Rodgers 6, 5. I don't have him on my list. I almost put Aaron Rodgers 10 over Russell Wilson. I don't know if that would have gave me any more clout, but I think Aaron Rodgers is going to, I think you're going to see thunder and lightning with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon this year. Possession football, I think Green Bay's going to rely on their defense. And do not be surprised if the Minnesota Vikings win that division. I see a 10-7 Green Bay Packers team this year. Just don't think they're as good as they were last year. When you lose the best receiver in the NFL, I'm sorry.
I hear you.
All right. Well, let's move on, gentlemen. Let's move on. We got college football to get into. I cannot wait. Tiny. What the heck? No Baker Mayfield. I'm disappointed. I think Russell Wilson should be higher. Joe Burrow will set the standards for our division. He says still top 10, RJ. I get it. College football top 6 projections. It looks like I get to go first. I love it. So I have my top 6, and then I'm going to give you my national championship. It's tough for me to do this, man. It's very, very tough for me to do this. Here's my top 6. I got the U of M number 6. I got Michigan number 6. I think the blowout to Ohio State that happens near the end of the year and not being able to play in a Big Ten championship game will end up hurting their chances and drop them down to number 6. I got Texas A&M number 5. A&M's going to be a very good football team this year, but they're going to get beat by Bama, and they don't get the opportunity to play in the SEC title game. So they are my number 5. Clemson with the cakewalk schedule, number 4. I think they run away with the ACC, and I still think even undefeated, they still can't crack the top 3. I got the Georgia Bulldogs number 3. That defense is still elite. Georgia's defense is still elite. And I think returning a lot of players such as Brock Bowers and Cottrell's favorite quarterback of all time, I think Georgia still ends up winning a lot of games. And I think you're going to find out very soon in week 1 when they blow the doors off of Oregon this week. And I just want to be clear about that. That will be one of my picks. Georgia minus 17 over Oregon. Number 2, I got the Ohio State Buckeyes. When you go undefeated and you have that good of a team, listen. Bringing over the defensive coordinator from Oklahoma State will be the difference for Ohio State this year. Coach Knowles will be the difference in Ohio State this year. Their offense is obviously going to they have the best 1, 2, 3 in the league. You got the second best quarterback in college football in CJ Stroud. You got the number 1 running back in college football in Travion Henderson. And listen, I don't need to say anything about Ejigbo because that kid is special and a whole line of Ohio State studs. But number 1, the best 2 players in the country play for the same team, the Alabama Crimson Tide. You got Bryce Young, who's your number 1 quarterback, and you have one of the most special, elite defensive prospects you will ever see in Will Anderson. So I have Alabama number 1. And then after we release our top 6, I'll give you, I guess we'll go all our national champions, how it plays out. Cottrell, it's on you, my friend.
I thought it was the same.
Oh, it's on Bill. It's on Bill. I apologize.
So number 6 for me, I have Utah. I think they are the 2-loss Pac-12 champ. I think they're going to come out. I think they're going to fall just outside. I think the Big 12, Pac-12, championship isn't going to help them as much. 2 losses is going to hurt them. I think them and USC are going to be the class of the Pac-12. I also think that conference is going to beat up on each other a little bit this year. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think USC is being a year away from what we think they're going to be. I think they have a good year this year. I just don't think it's a lot of change. It's a lot of change to go across country and do what Lincoln Riley is going to do. Next year, I think it's a completely different story. But I think Utah ekes out the Pac-12 championship this year. I'm very curious to see how they look on Saturday at Florida. I think it's a very interesting game to open up your season in a very hostile place to play. So number 5 for me, I disagree with Gino and Clemson a little bit. It's not a cakewalk schedule at all. There's a couple sleeper teams in the ACC. I've already talked about it. They have to go to Notre Dame, which won't be an easy game. I almost went Super Bowl here. It took me a while to send this in because I went back and forth between NC State and Clemson in the ACC. I think NC State is very, very good, a team that's not getting enough respect. But I think Clemson's going to have 2 losses. I don't think there's any shot they go through ACC undefeated. I don't know if DJ even starts the whole year under center, but I think they're going to have 2 losses, and I think it's going to hurt them. Number 4, Michigan. I think they're going to be 11-1. I said it last week when we talked about it. I think they're going to roll into Columbus at the end of the year. I think they're going to be undefeated. It's going to be number 2 versus number 4, rankings-wise, because I think Georgia will be undefeated at that point as well. So I have them number 3. I think Michigan will be a 1-loss team. I think the only blemish they're going to have is that Ohio State game. I think they hang on to the number 4 seed. Georgia, I think, is in the same boat. I think Georgia is going to beat Oregon this week. I agree with Gene as well. I don't think that game is going to be relatively close. They're going to play Alabama like they did last year in the SEC championship game. I think they'll lose, but I think that being their only loss in that game keeps them in the top 4. Number 2, I have Ohio State. We've talked about over and over and over what that offense is going to do. I'm a little bit more curious to see how they play Saturday. That offense is going to put up points every week, no matter against who they play with. We've talked, ad nauseum over and over about CJ Stroud, Travion Henderson, and Jigba. That's not my concern, and it wasn't my concern. We talked about it last week. I know they took Knowles over, and they have a new defensive coordinator. I want to see how they play. Notre Dame is lacking wide receivers right now. They have a great offensive line. They've debatably they probably have the second best tight end in the country, in Baby Gronk. They're going to try to play physical football. So I'm very curious to see how Ohio State's defense looks. Because if they have an Achilles heel, that's what it is. Because it's sure as hell not that offense. That offense is going to score points on anybody in the country. I have them number 2. In Alabama, I'm number 1. Gene pretty much hit on all the bullet points. They have the defending Heisman Trophy winner, and they have the number 1 pick in the draft next year, Will Anderson Jr. If you didn't watch the game last year, watch it over again and then just watch any defensive highlight from this year. The kid is just, it's special. He has the ability to be the next, any kind of highlight Hall of Fame guy you want to put in that blank. That's Will Anderson Jr. So I have Alabama finishing number 1 undefeated.
And we'll go over our champions after Cottrell releases his list. Cottrell, let's hear
my list.
Let's hear your crazy list. I've been hearing about it all day, baby.
My list is crazy, man. My list is crazy, and it's going to start off with Shally's Wolverines. I think that Michigan is going to – they're going to lose to Ohio State, and I think them not being able to play in the Big Ten championship game ultimately gets them at 6. Obviously, it depends on what other things can play out throughout the season, but I think them, although they go the whole season undefeated, them losing to Ohio State being the lasting thought when the committee has to go vote, I think that's going to push them down to 6. Number 5 is Clemson. I think Clemson is in a situation. I know they have some teams on their schedule that aren't just cakewalks, but I think they're in a situation where they only lose 1 game all season, and that's to my number 4. My number 4, NC State Wolfpack, and that's going to be led by Devin Leary. I mentioned it before when we gave our ACC preview. I think the Wolfpack won the ACC, and I think they run the table, man. I really do. My number 3 is a USC team. I think USC they're going to win all the games they're supposed to, but along the way, I think they slip up. They slip up to a school that they're not supposed to lose to. But I think they have enough in their gas tank where they still got to go beat Notre Dame, and they have to beat Oregon, and they have to beat Utah. I think that's a situation where USC is going to finish the year 11-1, 12-1 after the Pac-12 championship, and they're going to make it into the college football playoff. My number 2 is Ohio State. Ohio State, we know what they are. I think they run the table. They'll be 12-0 at season's end, win the Big Ten championship, and they'll get in. The problem is Alabama's also going to run the table, and they're going to win the SEC. And when you do that, you end up number 1. If you start a season number 1 and you don't lose, you're going to end the season number 1. And that's why I have Bama as the number 1 team going into the college football playoff.
So based off of your projections, and this is what drives me nuts, and I just want to be clear. I love that you're bold, bro. I have no issue with you being bold. None. My issue comes into is your absolute hate for Georgia because they made you look stupid last year.
No.
But follow me. Let me
Good, because I have questions as well.
Because if you have Clemson losing 2 games,
1.
You said 2.
I said 1. They lose 1 to the team I have above them, NC State.
So that means that you have Georgia losing at least 2 games. Because there's no way if Georgia loses 1 game that they would be behind Clemson.
I think it'll be different losing to the number 4 team and losing to the number 13 team. I think Georgia loses 1 game, and I think that 1 game is to the Florida Gators in Jacksonville.
So you have Florida in the SEC championship game then?
I do.
So Florida's in the SEC championship game and only and doesn't lose a game or loses 1 game. And then, but in order for them to make it to the SEC title game, if you only have Georgia losing 1 game to Florida, so I don't want to poke too many holes in the boat. But
I think Florida loses a game as well. I don't think Florida runs the table. I think Florida loses a game before Georgia, then they beat Georgia. But when you beat Georgia and you're on the same side of the conference, if you only have 1 loss in the conference, you get that tiebreaker, and then you go to the SEC championship game. And at that point, they're going to lose to Alabama in the SEC championship game. They got 2 losses. Okay. They won't make it in.
I guess my question would be, if I'm assuming that you have Clemson and Michigan as both 1 loss, how you would have Clemson over Michigan if Michigan's going to lose to Ohio State, which is ranked higher than NC State and is going to play a harder schedule.
The one thing with that too, I've already thought about all of this. Ohio State and Michigan is the last game of the season. That's going to be the lasting image in the committee's mind. Clemson, they get NC State in the middle of the year. They got an opportunity to show the committee, hey, we've changed since this October game, and they're going to be on a win streak. It'll be 5-6 game win streak at that point. The only thing that I kind of didn't know where to go is having Georgia as a 1-loss team. I could have easily put them in at 5 or 6. I think them, Clemson and Michigan are all in the same boat. It'll just be how the committee views a one-loss team. And I think of those three teams that Georgia would have the worst loss in Florida. Like I said, I think Michigan loses to Ohio State, and I think Clemson loses to NC State. Those two are in the playoff, and Florida won't be in the top 6.
I would argue Clemson would have the worst loss then at that point, only because they're going to be home when they play NC State. I don't know where Georgia plays Florida, though, because Michigan, obviously. Oh, yeah, so that's a neutral. So out of the three, then Clemson would have the worst loss then.
I disagree. If NC State's undefeated and they're in the college football playoff, I wouldn't say that's the worst loss.
But it'd be home. Michigan would lose to an undefeated 2 seed on the road, and Georgia would have lost to. If you're saying Florida's a one-loss SEC in an SEC championship game, they're in the top 6 or 7 somewhere, so they would lose to a 6 or 7 seed on a neutral field. So yeah, Clemson would have the worst loss.
Disagree.
And the fact that we got USC getting a loss, you said they'll slip up somewhere along the way. I don't know who they could lose to and still be number 3, but I get it. I understand. What?
This is the first call for Flex Seal of the year right here.
Listen, let's give our national champions. I guess, Kittrell, you want to go first because we kind of know where you're going national champion wise, and we'll do it in reverse order.
Absolutely. You already know where I'm going this year. Ohio State takes over the crown. This will be very much reminiscent of the 2014 year when Ohio State beat Alabama. I think this is a situation where Alabama, I'm not going to take anything away from them at all. I think this is just a great situation for Ohio State getting Jim Knowles. Of course, the question marks would be, how is that Ohio State defense? We know they're going to probably have the best offense in the country. And I think they had all the talent in the world last year defensively. They just couldn't put it together and be a productive bunch on the field. And I think having Jim Knowles' scheme, I think that will put that together. And I think their offense can score 45 points a game. And if you can do that and just hold your opponent to 40, then you're good to go. And I think Jim Knowles is more than capable than doing that with that bunch.
Okay. So you got Ohio State over Alabama.
Yes.
Okay. So what do you got, Bill?
So I will have Alabama beating Michigan in one semifinal, and then I will have Ohio State beating Georgia in the other semifinal. I think Georgia, as good as they are, I don't think they're as good as they were last year. We've talked about it. I think I would have loved to have seen this year's Ohio State team against Georgia, see how that would go, but they had a transcendent defense this year. It's not going to be as good this year. I'm not saying it's not going to be great, but it's, we're talking all-time defense ever last year. It's not going to be.
I agree.
And Ohio State just got too much offense. We talked about it. They're going to score points. So in the championship, I have Alabama over Ohio State. I think, again, we talk about Jim Knowles all we want and scheme and everything else. I'll agree a little bit with Cottrell. They have talent on that side of the ball. I don't think. I've said it before, and I pull no punches with it. That side of the ball wasn't tough last year. Coach isn't necessarily going to make you tough. That's a heart thing. That's a toughness thing for me. That's why I'm very curious to watch them play Saturday. I think they're going to win. I think they probably win comfortably at some point and pull away. I think they're a great team. I think they're a great offense. C.J. Stroud's amazing. Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be great. I'll take Alabama's defense to get a couple stops when they need to. And I'll take Bryce Young and the boys to score on Ohio State when they have to. And I'll take Alabama in the championship, national champion.
So I think that I remember 2 years ago when I talked about this, I said we have to see Justin Fields versus Trevor Lawrence. However we do that, we have to see that. And we've seen that. Justin Fields threw 6 touchdowns and one of the great college football playoff games in the semifinals when Ohio State played Clemson. I think this year you have to see C.J. Stroud versus Bryce Young. It's just must-see TV. It's what everybody in college football. It will be one of the most televised national championships of all time. And I don't care if it happens in the college football playoff or if it happens in the championship. I have Ohio State winning a dogfight versus Georgia, an absolute dogfight versus Georgia in the semifinal. I have Alabama winning an absolute blowout over Clemson. I'm talking about a 47-3 game. It's absolute destruction of Clemson. And in the national championship, I have Bryce Young versus C.J. Stroud. And I just think that Alabama is a little too much. I'm going to go with Alabama over Ohio State And I'm telling you right now, it'll be a game for the ages. 31-28, 31-27, 35-31. But it will be a game for the ages in which one possession decides it. And I think the better of the two quarterbacks will win the game, and that will be Alabama and Bryce Young.
You said the better of the two quarterbacks win. I thought we were going with CJ Stroud then. What's going on here, Gene?
Bryce Young is better than CJ Stroud, and I have no doubts in my mind about that. None. Zero.
And for clarification here, I know we didn't talk about it before. I got CJ Stroud winning the Heisman this year. CJ Stroud, Devin Leary, Bryce Young, Will Anderson are the four that get the invite, and I got CJ Stroud winning it.
I would love for the opportunity to pick Will Anderson, but it's very tough for a defensive lineman to win the Heisman Trophy, or edge rusher, linebacker, however you want to clarify him. But I would love to be able to pick Will Anderson for Heisman. But we'll do our Heisman picks fully next week.
I'll tell you this, though, barring injury, he will be in New York. And I firmly believe that. You'll have a defensive player in the finals 2 years in a row. I knew Aiden wasn't going to win last year. I was just glad that Aiden got his recognition. He was nominated and he was there. I think there's a shot Will Anderson wins. And the only reason I say that is the only thing that scares me is I think some of the voters are going to be torn between CJ and Bryce, and I think they'll split votes somewhere along the lines there. The only thing that scares me is Bryce and Will Anderson being on the same team. They're going to have a lot of split votes there, so it's going to be very interesting. But I definitely think he makes it to the finals.
Dante, I love your finalist list. It doesn't have Bryce Young on it. That's okay, because one of my dark horses for Heisman Trophy this year is Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee. I cannot wait to watch him play this year. I think that their offense is going to be explosive. I think their defense is going to hold them back. But, man, I love that you have him there, number 4. I would love to see him get invited. I think he's going to have a phenomenal year. I think that you're very, very high on Trevion Henderson, CJ Stroud being 1-2, though. But Bill, understand.
Don't you love how into college football Gene is now? Like, we've turned a whole new leaf from 2 years ago, man.
He was 2 years ago. He was a borderline cash. Now he thinks he runs the shit.
We're talking about Tennessee football
I've watched,
and it's not the Titans.
Listen, I've watched a lot of college football last year, and I got 2 TVs set up in the man cave so I can watch 2 games at once. If you guys want to come over anytime, Cottrell, you can take the trip out here Saturday, Sunday. We're gonna have a cool
I'll hop
time.
on the PJ.
I'm more impressed. I'm more impressed that I got Gene watching golf than anything. It's not too much.
Got me watching that much golf. I like
you watch it more. You lead on. Don't be shy on the podcast. You watch it more.
I don't like the wacky ball, whatever you call it.
Wacky ball.
Ground.
All right, so college football picks. This is the last part for Cottrell, and then Cottrell's got to go to some work meeting. I don't know, but college football picks. Did you guys do 3-1 or did you guys do 2-1? I did 3-1.
I did 3-1.
I personally did 2-1, but
that's what we did last year. Understandable. All right, so I have 3-1. What order do you guys want to go into?
Super dog last.
Yeah,
that's fine. Who do you want to go for? You want to go 1 by 1, or do you want to go 3? Give all 3 of our picks. I think.
Are we going over the games first? The big ones of the week.
All right, let's go over the big games of the week first, and then we'll do our pick 'em. Cottrell, lead us off. What game you want to start with?
I mean, let's start with the one that we've already somewhat mentioned, and that's Oregon, Georgia. Gene, you already kind of alluded to that's going to be one of your picks this week. It's also going to be one of mine.
It will be.
I won't go too crazy in depth here, but this is a situation where Dan Lanning, who was the DC of that Georgia Bulldogs team last year, he is now the head coach of the Oregon Ducks, and the Oregon Ducks just got Bo Nix, transfer quarterback from Auburn. So this will be a matchup wise, it'll be an interesting game. See how everything unfolds here. I think Georgia ultimately wins the game. I do think it's going to be, you said you're going to lay the 17.5. I think it's going to be a little bit closer than you think. I think Georgia wins by 2 touchdowns, but I think the game is actually somewhat close for the majority of it. And the Bulldogs start the roll middle of the second half.
I actually checked my picks as not one of my picks. Very close to being one of my picks, but it was just off. But I still like Georgia minus 17.5. I think Georgia wins the game. I think they win it walking away. I think they win it by 24. The only thing that worries me is last second backdoor cover, which is why I didn't put it in as one of my picks. But I like Georgia in this game a lot. I think obviously Oregon's going to be motivated, but a new system versus Kirby Smart's system that's been there. New coach, first week, you got to play Georgia. Come on. Like, it's not a good situation.
Agreed.
I agree as well. I don't have them winning by 24. I have them winning. I have them winning by 20. I think there's probably, to Gene's point, I'll say like Oregon's driving late, maybe a backdoor cover, but maybe a stupid turnover, something like that. I think Oregon being ranked 11 is high for me, personally. Georgia, again, we know what Georgia's going to be. Offense is going to put up points. They're going to play good defense. It's going to be a hostile environment. I mean, they're playing in Atlanta, but, that's going to be a home Georgia crowd. They're playing there because Mercedes-Benz, holds more than Sanford Stadium does. So I think Georgia wins comfortably. They start their defense of their national championship off with a big win versus a ranked opponent.
You want to go to the Swamp next? Because I really have been looking forward to getting this game.
We go Swamp next.
You got Utah playing at Florida. Utah coming to the Swamp, and they already, one of the things I really just, I get it. You're not supposed to like act like you're worried, but one of the Utah players said it's just it's not a big deal going to the Swamp. Not a big deal going to play at Florida. It's just another road game. I don't believe that. I think Utah's going to be very good this year. Return a lot of starters. I do. But with that being said, I think the Florida Gators pull the upset and knock off Utah this week in the Swamp. And I truly believe that. I think Florida wins the game, and I think it'll be a very, very, very good game.
You already know how I feel about Florida, and I didn't have Utah in my top 6, and I think opening weekend is going to be a big reason why they aren't there. I think they're going to get their first loss of the year to those Florida Gators. I'm a big believer in what Billy Napier has. I saw him perform at his last school, and I think he's going to bring that to the Gators, and they're going to be ready to play. That Utah team, they were very good last year, and I think they're going to still be very good this year. But going into that Swamp, that hostile environment, those SEC boys with Billy Napier's scheme, Anthony Richardson, give me the Gators.
I'm going bold. I'm going with Utah.
That's not bold.
They're the favorite.
They're on the road. You guys just both took the homer team. I'm going Utah. I'm going Utah. And I think there's a reason Florida's unranked because I don't think they're that good yet. Anthony Richardson, we already talked about. Cottrell loves him. He's a little higher on him than I am. I still think he's a year away. But I'll tell you this. He has the home field advantage. First start, under the lights. A lot of shock. A lot of shock and all last year. A lot of deer in the headlights from him last year. He's going to go out and he's going to play one of the best defenses in the country right off the bat. They get behind early, start squeezing the football a little bit. And we're not going to talk about Florida's defense. That wasn't great last year. Now, I will agree with both of you. I was super happy for Billy Napier when he got that job in Florida because I think he's going to put Florida back on the map and get it back to where they were back in the Steve Spurrier days. Florida's one of those programs. If they're in national championship contention, it's better for college football. It's better for 100%. The SEC. I think we're there. I don't think we're there this year, though. I think we're a year or two away. And listen, I get the Swamp. The Swamp is not an easy place to play football. Don't get me wrong. They've gone to Oregon. They've gone to USC. They've gone to other places like that. It's not like they're playing, Kent State every year, and then all of a sudden they're going to Florida. So it's listen, a lot of those kids on that team have played in big games. Will there be some stupid penalties? Yes. First game of the year, Swamp super loud. You're going to have all that stuff anyway. Are they going to be rattled to the point where they don't perform? No, they're not. I like Utah. And say last-minute field goal to pretty much walk it off. I say Utah squeaks out of Gainesville with a win.
And then the last game we got to go over is Notre Dame, Ohio State, right? Like this is the game that we have to talk about. Ohio State at home, which basically every one of their big games they got at home. The schedule makers were very friendly to Ohio State this year. They played Notre Dame. This is one of the games I am picking, so I will refrain from talking about it.
Cottrell, are you picking it as well, I'm assuming?
No, I'm not picking it, but I mean,
Okay.
I'm not picking it because I figured everyone knows where I'm going here.
Right. So I'll say this. I touched on it a little bit when we did our national champions predictions. Ohio State's offense is going to look great. Notre Dame has a pretty good defense. I expect Ohio State to be in the 30s in this game, and I'll give them all the credit in the world. I expect Ohio State to win the game. I'm not picking it. I would be shocked if Ohio State does not cover. That being said, the thing you need to watch if you're a Cottrell, if you are a Ohio State national champion believer, watch how their defense plays. Again, we've talked about it numerous times. Knowles is there. Their schemes are going to be better. You're going to have different looks. But that's not what you have to watch. Like I said, Notre Dame is not going to be able to line up and throw the football very well Saturday night. They're down to the third, fourth, and fifth receivers in the depth chart. They have a great tight end, but they have a great offensive line. They're trying to run the ball. If you see Ohio State start to get bullied again, that's where you need to be concerned. If this game starts to look anything like it did in Ann Arbor last year, with kids getting blown off the ball, their linebackers getting run over, all that type of thing, that's if you're an Ohio State fan, that's when you start having concern. I don't think you're going to see it that much Saturday because, like I said, I just don't think Notre Dame offensively has the horses to do what they need to do. And if they get behind, they're not going to be able to run the ball as much. They're going to have to throw to try to keep up with that high-powered offense. So I think Ohio State wins comfortably. And it's that's the only thing I'm really going to be watching in that game, if I'm being honest.
So am I going to have to hear about how Michigan beat Ohio State all year long? Every game we talk about, like you couldn't make any points about Notre Dame without bringing up that game from last year.
Bro, I just gave your off. Hey, number one, why would I not? B, I just gave your offense all the credit in the world.
I didn't hear any of that. All I heard was Michigan bullied them.
How many times have I said the three of them are going to be great? How many more times, dude? My mouth won't let me say it a certain amount of times before I just throw up all over my computer.
You can say it as many times as you want to. If you when I hear Michigan,
don't let them suck
them, that's all I hear. That's all I hear.
I'll stop saying it when your linemen and your linebackers stop getting bullied. When that happens and they man up, then I'll stop saying it. That's it. I just said you guys are going to win by more than the spread. I think you're going to cover. I think your offense is going to look great. It's the last time I'm saying it. You're just fishing for compliments now. Your boys need to be tougher on the defensive end because if they're not, same thing's going to happen to them that happened to them last year.
I think they'll be perfectly,
baby.
They'll be perfectly fine. I got Ohio State win. I think they win big.
Agreed.
I think it's a situation. I think this game looks very similar to what the Ohio State-Michigan State game did last year, where it's Michigan State starts to score later on in the game, but I think the offense comes out on fire and they get up big and Ohio State wins big.
It's one of my picks this week. I will go first this week for Pick'em. I don't mind. I'm taking Pick'em very, very serious this year.
We're tracking it, so
I want to win college football Pick'em and NFL Pick'em. And I don't want it to be close, just to be clear. I'm honed in. I spent 4 to 5 hours breaking down different picks, line movement, what situations, weather situation, breaking down these picks.
He went from casual to now he's expert level G now.
Steady. I'm studying. I don't like giving picks away unless they're winners.
Years.
I love
First game I got. Ohio State minus 17.5 over Notre Dame. I think Ohio State wins this game 41-13. And I mean that when I say it. I think it will be a bloodbath. I think opening up at Ohio State is not the situation that Notre Dame wants to walk into. I think Notre Dame's playoff hopes are completely diminished after getting walked across the field by Ohio State. I think Notre Dame will try to run the ball. I think they'll get an early field goal. I think Ohio State scores a touchdown. I think Notre Dame tries to run the ball. They turn the ball over. I think Ohio State scores a touchdown, and it's 14-3 before you blink. And if it's 14-3 and Notre Dame is forced to throw the football, then the only person you have to take away from Notre Dame is Baby Gronk. Because at that situation, it's not going to work for Notre Dame. I got Ohio State winning this game 41-13.
Blowout city, baby.
On my second pick. This is a little reverse line movement action. I think that Cincinnati's getting really disrespected. They're 7-point dogs versus Arkansas. I like Cincinnati. Give me the points. I'll take plus 6.5 where it's at now. Most of the money is on Arkansas, but yet the spread keeps moving towards Cincinnati's favor. The reverse line movement is all over this game. I like Cincinnati plus 6.5. I think at very worst, they lose by a field goal. I think they win the game outright. This game, I'm extremely confident. Where do they have the gall of setting the over-under tomorrow night at 53 in West Virginia versus Pittsburgh? Pittsburgh lost Kenny Pickett. They lost Jordan Addison. They lost their offense coordinator. This game has 16-13 written all over it. I got the under 53 in West Virginia versus Pittsburgh. I think that's a no doubt about it. I think that you slam dunk that one. And then last but not least, my super dog special. Oklahoma, what are they doing? 31.5 point favorites over UTEP? Nah, UTEP keeps that game within 14. I got UTEP plus 31.5, baby. Let's go.
All right, so me and Gene are going head-to-head on one of these, so that'll be fun. My first pick, I got NC State minus 11.5 over East Carolina. I'm high on NC State. Like I said, I think there's a good shot they win the ACC. I went back and forth a million times. I think NC State comes out hot, and I think they beat East Carolina probably by 3 touchdowns. So I will take NC State minus 11.5. The second one, I'm going to disagree with Gene. I think Cincinnati's replacing too much, and I think Arkansas is tired of hearing about how they beat everybody but one of the good teams in the SEC last year. They have a lot of offensive talent returning, and they're home. That game's a true home game for them. I will take Arkansas minus 6.5. I think they win by 10. I think it is a good game. I just think they have too much down the stretch. You're replacing a quarterback. You lost two just outstanding cornerbacks on defense. To say that Cincinnati team is going to be anywhere near as good as they were last year, I think is a kind of a hope and a prayer. So I will take Arkansas minus 6.5. I almost took the Oklahoma game until I saw this. Oklahoma is going to be a better team than Texas is this year. Never mind. I'm not there yet. I'm taking USC minus 32.5 versus Rice at home. This is going to be Lincoln Riley's coming out party. They're going to be home. I think you're going to see trick plays. I think Addison's probably going to go for over 200 yards. I think he tries to make a statement. I really do. Lincoln Riley is going to try to make a statement saying, we're here. This is what you're going to see. This is what we're going to be. I think they cover. It's a huge number to lay, but I think they cover. My super dog, though, to Gene's point, I almost took Oklahoma. And then at the same time, I scrolled down a couple more games and saw this. We can all agree Oklahoma's going to take a step back this year. How does anybody give Texas to lay 37.5 points? What have they done anywhere in the last 4 years to make them 37.5 point favorites? There is no shot they win by 37.5 points. I will take University of Louisiana Monroe to keep that game within 37.5 to get me some bonus points. That's my super dog.
Bobby Boucher ain't playing for them, bro. The LSU right. Mud Dogs aren't winning.
That's all right.
Quinn Ewers goes off in that one. Texas by 50.
Nah.
Yo, I'll tell you right now. Shout out to Dante, bro. These graphics, these super dog, like the little super dog, the wonder dog on here, I was dying, bro. Shout out to Dante with the graphics.
All right,
so I know you gotta go. Let's hear your crap.
I got two here for you in a super dog, of course. The first one I do like, that I really like, is the under in Georgia, Oregon. I think this is a situation where Georgia's defense is going to hold Bo Nix and company to a limited amount of points, and I think Dan Lanning is a coach. If anybody can stop Stetson Bennett and his non-talented self, I think Dan Lanning is the perfect guy to do it. I think Georgia wins the game. I already said I think they win by 2 touchdowns, and I don't think that game's ever really close, but I do like the under 53.5 in that game. The other game I like, Dante, you might not like this one so much. I like LSU minus 3.5 against Florida State on Sunday. I think LSU is in a situation where Jaden Daniels is transferring in from Arizona State, and he's most likely going to be their starter. Brian Kelly hasn't announced one specifically yet, but I think it's going to be Jaden Daniels. And they got one of the best. I think he's going to be one of the best receivers in the country in Keyshawn Butte. So I think LSU covers that 3.5, and they go on to roll Florida State. And then my super dog. I'm usually big on the super dogs. This week there wasn't one particularly that stood out to me, so I'm going with Georgia Tech at home against Clemson plus 22.5. Obviously, I think Clemson wins the game, but I think Georgia Tech is in a situation where they're playing a home game. DJ struggled last year. They may try a few different wrinkles here and there. Maybe they can keep the game within 3 touchdowns. I don't know. But I'll take Georgia at home to cover 22.5.
Well, Cottrell, I appreciate your picks. Last year, you and Shally absolutely dominated. Shally ended up coming up on top in the college football pick'em last year. I was third place. Y'all two dominated me. That will not happen this year. That will not happen this year.
Me and Cottrell came down to the wire last year.
Hey, real quick,
it was a
before I hop off here, I know you're about to get into Mount Rushmore. Can I give my pick already?
Yeah, I mean, we know the
pick. Give it to you. New York.
Cottrell, we love you, man. We love you. I'm going to welcome Dante in to go over to Mount Rushmore's with us if he can. His graphics have been unbelievable. Cottrell, I hope you have a good work meeting. I hope this is the last one forever. But with that being said, I appreciate you hopping in and not hopping in, just appreciate everything that you can contribute to the show.
Gotcha.
Let's get into Mount Rushmore's.
See you, bud.
Take care, brother. Dante Sell, you hopping in for us, brother? There he is. Look at that.
God damn, Atlanta Braves.
Atlanta Braves. I know.
Sorry, man.
I don't know if he was trying to hurt our feelings or something.
Oh. Hold on, I'm trying to fix the graphic real quick.
No, you're good, bro. You're
got you guys going into the multiverse here. Hold up.
I'll take it. I'll go right into the multiverse. But we got a lot to get into. This Mount Rushmore, Miami versus New York. It should, in my opinion, it'll be a whitewash. But let's go over it. We'll go over it. Let's give Miami their roses first. I appreciate that you have Miami on there first. I want to give them their roses. It's a formidable opponent for some cities, but unfortunately, they're going against a buzzsaw. You have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL history, and Dan Marino, one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever sling the rock. The guy could put the ball anywhere with speed. He could throw the ball to a window. Dan Marino could throw the ball 40 yards downfield through a window that's about a football and a half size. That's just what he could do. He never got that elusive championship by no fault of his, in my opinion. I think Miami really just did him wrong. I want to start with Dan Marino.
Yeah, I mean, I think most pundits at some point would have him. I mean, he can't really be lower than anything lower than 7 or 8. I would tell you don't know anything about football. It's one of the best to ever do it. I had one chance to do Super Bowl. They lost. But yeah, I mean, he's the most recognizable face of the Miami Dolphins franchise, which is crazy when you consider they have the only undefeated team in the history of the NFL. But Dan Marino is a legend. Like you said, he was not really like a run and shoot guy per se, but he was one of the first guys that really operated a lot out of the shotgun. And he was damn good. He had a quick release, had a strong ass arm. And to Gene's point, he was accurate. He could fit the ball in anywhere. Had good receivers through his court time there. Just they never had the team that could get over the hump. It's a shame. It's a shame that he retired without a Super Bowl ring because he obviously deserved it. But for me, he's a top 5 quarterback, top 6, somewhere right around there, and absolutely deserves to be on any Mount Rushmore.
Dante, your thoughts on Marino?
So yeah, I mean, this is obviously, I was a little boy starting off football, of course, when Dan Marino was in the league. So, I can't say enough about the guy. Probably, when you look at quarterbacks, probably had, if not the best arm talent that we've ever seen next to Aaron Rodgers. He's pretty high up there as far as arm talent goes. And, did a lot with, without an extraordinary running game, to be completely honest with you, with Miami. But, I'm not putting anything beside Marino. I think everybody, when you look at the history of all NFL players and all quarterbacks out there, if you had to say which quarterback do you wish would have at least got one or multiple rings, you have to put Dan Marino in that conversation. And some of the funniest commercials and interviews of all time too. He was kind of he was kind of a no BS kind of guy as well. Wanted to keep it strictly football for some stuff, but definitely you can't think of the number 13 without Dan Marino. That's for sure. And that goes beyond Miami.
And a great guest starring role in Ace Ventura at the time.
Next one, I'm going to go with a Miami Heat combo. We got in my opinion, number 4 shooting guard ever to play the game. Some people have him 3. That's number 3, Dwayne Wade, Flash, great defensive guard. The guy leads the NBA in block shots from the guard position in the history of the game, which is unbelievable. And, in order to play in Miami, you got to be tough. You want to talk about defensive specialist. This might be a little bit bold, but I think the second greatest defensive big man ever in the history of the game, Alonzo Mourning. Now, Alonzo Mourning was a block shot specialist. I mean, this guy was tough. You didn't go to the lane and get past Zoe like it was nothing. Not to mention, he averaged 18 a night. So he still could score the basket, and he could shut down your opposing center. He was one of the biggest forces in the lane in those late 90s Miami Heat teams, and he got himself a championship ring alongside of Shaq and Dwayne Wade on that 2006 roster. So we got Flash and Alonzo Mourning.
Yeah, I mean, Dwayne Wade, I mean, he's, depending on how you rank, I mean, he's a top 20 player of all time. I mean, he's right in that area. Won a couple championships in Miami, was the heart and soul of that franchise forever. It was one of those things, even when LeBron went down there, it was Dwayne Wade's team. And it remained that way throughout his career. He's beloved there, still lives there. And I think the crazy thing is, you kind of touched on a little bit, with as good as he was, dude was tough as nails, man. I mean, that dude played through injury after injury. He's one of those guys that absolutely gave his body to the sport. You saw how, kind of broken down he was towards the end with his knees. But that dude was a gamer. He was definitely one of those guys you look at and, definitely say, if you could ever had somebody like him on your team, you take him in a heartbeat. And he's, on top of everything else, he's a good guy. I mean, he's done a lot for that community. He's very outspoken, supportive of his children. Absolute, just a legend covers it. That's what he is. He's a legend. And it's crazy because he's one of the first ones in our generation to be done. We kind of all grew up watching a lot, more so you guys and me, because I was a little bit older. But it's crazy. I mean, that's what he is. He's a legend. He's mid-40s now, probably early 40s maybe. And it's weird to talk about somebody like that young, but that's what he is. He's a legend. And then to your point about Zoe's probably a little underrated. He was another one of those big men that Georgetown pumped out. He came out after Patrick Ewing. And he was a great defensive player, but he was no slouch offensively either. He was on a bunch of good teams. Like you said, he finally got his ring in 2006, Hall of Fame guy. Unfortunate how he had to stop playing because of his kidney issue. But again, another one. I mean, you didn't think about the Miami Heat without thinking about him real quick. But local guy, as far as, in terms of celebrity around Miami, people love him down there, man. Love him. You won't hear anybody say anything bad about Alonzo Mourning.
As you should.
No,
as you should, because Zoe was tough, and Zoe was the enforcer on a lot of those great teams.
Yep.
One thing I kind of wanted to add is with Dwayne Wade. I actually think Dwayne Wade, and Cottrell is going to hate me for this, and that's fine. But I think Dwayne Wade is the reason that taught LeBron how to win. And I remember that distinctly. Remember that 2010 NBA Finals, the year that they lost to the Mavericks, and them making fun of Dirk, and Dirk coming back and then winning 4 straight. And if you watch the next year in 2011 when they won their first ring, if you watch that next year, the person that got the ball with the game on the line down the stretch was Dwayne Wade. LeBron was obviously the best player on the team, but I think Dwayne Wade taught him how to win. Now, 2012, totally different story. way more LeBron's team than Wade's. That transition, but there was a lot of arguments, if you remember 2011, of whose team was it? Was it Wade's? Was it LeBron's? And there's a lot of people that argue Dwayne Wade to being a better player than LeBron in 2009, 10, 11. He had already had a ring in 06 with one of the most dominant performances you'll ever see in the NBA Finals when he basically carried Shaq to that ring in 06. So
to piggyback on that real quick, I think there's two things Dwayne Wade taught LeBron James, and to your point, you saw it distinctly after that season, him change the player. He taught him how to be a leader. He absolutely taught him how to be a better leader. Listen, even at that point in their careers, there was no team LeBron James was going to go on and he wasn't going to be the best player. That's who he was. But being the best player and being a leader are two completely different things. Dwayne Wade taught him how to be a leader, and he taught LeBron James humility. You look at how he went down there and taught him, had the whole decision thing, which is to this day why a lot of people don't like LeBron James. He went down there and did all those things, and was a big spotlight guy. And not that, listen, there's nothing wrong with that when you're that good of a player. But to your point with making fun of Dirk and all that stuff, he taught him humility. He told him not to take any of that stuff for granted. You know what I mean? Like, you're not guaranteed to be in the finals every year, no matter even if you're LeBron James. We talk about Michael all the time. Look how long it took Michael to get there. So Dwayne Wade absolutely made LeBron James a better basketball player. And they're best friends. And that's that's what he's supposed to do. But that just speaks even more highly of Dwayne Wade, who he is as a player and as a person.
Any comments on Wade and Zoe?
So I'm not like the biggest basketball fan. You guys know that, but again, another guy that really took over my my teenage years of when I paid attention to a little bit of basketball. Things I remember about Dwayne Wade, you never heard that this guy was a slouch at all. Always went hard for that team. Was the epitome of the Miami Heat when nobody was talking about the Miami Heat until, really until he got there for the longest part of, especially my childhood. But, when I think of the Miami Heat, and I guess this is just a testament to him, is when I think about the Miami Heat, I think about Dwayne Wade. And, this is coming from a guy that's not a basketball fan like you guys are. So I think that says a lot about, only about him. When it could have been foreshadowed with LeBron coming there and Chris Bosh and then winning the championships that they did. But I still don't think about LeBron James being there. Every time I hear the Miami Heat, it's Dwayne Wade all day. Alonzo Mourning, I can't, I don't really know too much about, so I'll let you guys, you guys give him a little bit of justice. But Dwayne Wade, I totally do remember, all the way being a Miami Heat.
Love it. And then last but not least, we really debated on whether we were going to throw coaches on this list. And I'll tell you, the nice way to put it, right, is when you think of Miami Dolphins, you think of Dan Marino and you think of Don Shula. You took a Don Shula being a coach there for 27 years. I think it was 30 years. Led them to the undefeated season, only one in NFL history. Developed Dan Marino, was a constant winner. Don Shula was one of the greatest coaches the NFL has ever seen, especially offensive minds. So I wanted to, we definitely, it was between him and Bob Greasy. And when you're thinking of the Miami Dolphins and when you're thinking of Miami sports, it would almost be sacrilegious to leave off somebody like Don Shula.
Yeah. I think the Bob Greasy thing, he was obviously the quarterback of, the undefeated team and all those things. He's maybe not the most recognizable player even off that team, though. You have Larry Zonka that was on that team and a couple other guys that are more of Miami staples. But, yeah, listen, there's been one undefeated NFL team in the history of the league, and it's the Miami Dolphins, and it was coached by Don Shula. And he was another guy, man, a staple of Miami. Was there his whole career, retired, absolutely beloved there. There's still all the stuff every year, all the players honor him. And, every time the last undefeated team in the NFL loses, they all send out their break out the champagne tweets. And, they always talk about Don Shula. Seemed like a great guy, a great coach. And yeah, like I said, man, if you coach the only other undefeated national or Super Bowl championship winning team in the NFL, that's special. And it deserves recognition.
I think with Don Shula, and I've done a lot of research on Don Shula for a very, very long time, so I might hit you with some stuff that you guys probably didn't know. I mean, this is a guy that served in the
Love
National
it.
Guard during the Korean War, so you could put that as his resume. And I think even more so of his accomplishments as a coach is the impact that he's had on the outside. Not only was a teammate of Johnny Unitas, I mean, when you think of people that had come from Virginia, he is the University of Virginia. He has to be the number one guy that's come out of there as far as accomplishments go. And then also, if you look at his coaching tree, some of his assistant coaches that have actually gone on and won Super Bowls, Chuck Noll was one of them. And his sons have actually played. And then, the late, great Howard Schellenberger was one of his assistant coaches as well. And then if you want to keep going down the line of coaches that have had success in the college level in the NFL, Doug Peterson is one of his former players, and actually Doug Marrone as well. So when you talk about impacts outside of the game and kind of giving you guys a little history lesson on on Don Shula, go and do your homework, man. I think, like I said, outside of him as a player, outside of him as a coach, his everything else is just as impressive as that undefeated season that he had with the Dolphins.
Bro, thank you so much for adding all that, because great knowledge, man. Thank you. I want to get in New York. With New York, it's very tough. All right. So with the New York Mount Rushmore, I want to give you a little understanding of what we did to get here. So there's New York 1, New York 2. Most cities that have 6 or more teams, we have to have 2 Mount Rushmores because they have 6 or more professional teams. New York has 7. You got the Yankees, the Mets. You have the Rangers, the Islanders. Really 8 if you count Brooklyn. I didn't count Brooklyn. You have the Knicks, and then you have the Giants and the Jets. So we broke it down where we went Yankees, Giants, Rangers, and Knicks on one side. Then on the other side, you have Jets, Mets, Islanders, and then New York professional athletes. You've already seen we've done this multiple times with Jimmy Johnson, a couple other athletes that are well, Michael Phelps from Baltimore, stud athletes that come from that city. There's a big one for New York too, but we'll get into then. We have to really talk about it. But guys, by the likes of Mike Tyson, New York City, 100%. So we'll get into New York 2 list later, but for New York 1 list, it was very tough to leave off Mark Messier. It was very tough, but we have the Yankees are just the best franchise in the history of baseball. It's not very close. And with all the, he might not have been the hardest name to leave off. Mickey Mantle is left off this list. And to a lot of Yankees fans, that might be sacrilegious. But let's unveil the New York Mount Rushmore, New York 1. I mean, it's very tough. You can't have a New York Mount Rushmore without Babe Ruth, Paul DeShot. They're talking about the guy that hit the most 500-foot home runs in the history of baseball. This guy was the second best hitter ever to play the game of baseball. He was super talented, and he played a long time. The curse of the Bambino stuck in Boston for years after Boston sold him to the Yankees, and Babe Ruth since then, the great Bambino. I don't know what more to say about him other than absolute home run hitter, bomber, one of the greatest hitters ever. And it's super tough to hit a home run in baseball, but to call your shot dead center field and hit that ball 500 feet. And when Babe Ruth played baseball, like they did a stat on this, he would have had an additional 227 home runs that were outs or not outs, doubles that were in the ballpark because of how far the fences were back when Babe played baseball. 227 additional home runs, most 500-foot home runs ever. Babe Ruth.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, listen, the dude is the guy almost transcends baseball. He is the biggest, almost, kind of, he's definitely a legend, but he almost is bigger than the game. I mean, the guy's got nickname after nickname. You got Great Bambino, Sultan of SWAT, Colossus of Clout. There's literally 20 of them. To some people, he's still the best player to ever play. Genius brought up a good point. People forget nowadays, man, we play in these parks where, it's 310, 320, 330 on the line. But they were playing in parks back then where the power alley to right center was 420 feet. That's bigger than every park to center field that there is in Major League Baseball right now. The part that Gene left out, too, is he was an all-star pitcher for a couple years before he just became a hitter. Everybody talks about Shohei Ohtani now. And this is the reason he gets compared to Babe Ruth, because Babe Ruth was the first one to do it. He's just absolutely, and he was the biggest personality in the game back then too. I mean, there's all the tales and the stories and the urban legends of how he used to eat hot dogs before he got in the box, and he didn't want to run all the time, like just crazy stuff. But I mean, if you ever watched, there are highlights of him. You know what I mean? If you ever watched him, he was just different. To get in the box and literally point where you're going to hit the ball and then do it. I can't emphasize enough to you, playing baseball all my life at a pretty high level, how freaking hard that is to do. And it's nuts, man. I mean, like I said, nobody's going to give you, if you ask anybody who the best baseball player is at ever play, nobody's going to get far on the list before this guy's name pops up. So he absolutely anchors this list.
And I want to add one thing. I'm not 100% sure on this, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he has the lowest ERA in the history of the World Series. I think he's 2-0 with a 0 ERA, minimum 9 innings pitched. But I think that it's obviously tied with other people that have had shutouts. But I think he has 2-0 in the World Series as a pitcher with 16 innings pitched, 0 earned runs. I'm pretty sure that's the exact stat.
I would have to look it up. I'm not sure. I know I've heard something of that before. And here's the other thing. His first couple years in the league, he was nothing but a pitcher. He didn't bat all the time. I mean, so you're talking about, hundreds, if not, another 1,000 of bats of which he could have done. And the reason, once they found out he could hit like that, they were like, kid, you can't pitch anymore. Like, we need you to hit like every day. Like, we can't. Yeah. You can't just play every 5 days. Like, this isn't going to work. And then you mentioned the big one, man. The curse of Babe Ruth. That haunted Boston forever, man. To sell a guy like that and then him to go to, the Yankees and anchor that franchise for 15 years with another guy that we're going to talk about in a couple minutes. It's still to this day got to be the worst transaction in the history of sports. It has to be
100%. Do you want to give us anything on Babe Ruth, Dante, or do you want to head into Lawrence Taylor?
I have nothing for you.
Gotcha. Dante's so who's Babe Ruth?
No, Lawrence Taylor is the next on the list for New York, and I think it's safe to say if he's not the best defensive player of all time, he's second. I think the argument would be between him and Reggie White, in my opinion. And I might have a little homer bias because I'm from Philadelphia.
Same.
But
I think when we did our list, remember, we all had Reggie White winning over Lawrence Taylor.
I did your show that night. We did that, correct. That was.
But with that being said, Lawrence Taylor was unbelievable. I mean, he was unblockable. The staple of that Giants Super Bowl run. Parcells, man, Lawrence Taylor is just something special. You can't talk about great defensive players without mentioning Lawrence Taylor. And one of the biggest sports in America, football. If you're asking someone who the greatest 5 players to ever play the game of football, I'd be remiss to tell you that Lawrence Taylor's name doesn't come up. Like, when I get asked that question, I think Jerry Rice, Barry Sanders, Tom Brady, Lawrence Taylor, and Reggie White. Like, that's like my 5. And I'm sure there's different people that can say different names, but Lawrence Taylor is on one of those lists.
Yeah, so I mean, Lawrence Taylor, you look at, it was kind of a perfect storm thing, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Obviously, freak athlete, freak talent. He went to, the biggest market there is. He went to New York. Went to a team with a coach that recognized what he was, knew he wasn't going to be able to control him, asked, kind of like simple compromises and then, pretty much, I just want you to go out there and kill people. Bill Parcells has talked about it before. He's like, I called a defense for 10 people and I told LT to do what he wanted to do because you just couldn't stop him. And you want to talk about, Babe Ruth having tall tales and urban legends. LT's got some to match. There is stories of him, saying he had to go into he had to run into the locker room to go to the bathroom, and him doing cocaine and coming back out and then just like ripping a quarterback's head off, like just crazy stuff, like stuff that couldn't happen today. Yeah, like and listen, and on top of everything else, the one thing that really helped Lawrence Taylor was he had the personality to fit into New York. The dude loved the attention. He loved the spotlight. He played great when the spotlight was on. And New York City ate him up, man. Ate him up. They loved him. And he's just one of those guys. We don't have to sit here and talk about him. Show anybody who has any kind of football knowledge. Just show them 5 minutes of tape of Lawrence Taylor, and you don't need to say anything else. It's all right there. Your eyes aren't going to deceive you. To Gene's point, I'm a little bit biased because of Reggie. I grew up with Reggie. Reggie was kind of the first, like Philadelphia great that I knew. And I'll take Reggie over LT, but I won't be mad at anybody who takes LT over Reggie. And for my liking, I 100% agree with Gene. They're 1 and 2 defensively, in my opinion.
What could have been if Reggie White didn't play in the USFL?
Yeah,
that's always been my argument with Reggie White. But Lawrence Taylor, just being one of those guys that people till this day, every linebacker from Michael Parsons to Von Miller to even Aaron Donald has mentioned, if you're not watching Lawrence Taylor tape, you're not an NFL caliber player. Those are not my words. Those are these guys' words that are playing on that defensive line and linebacker to this day. So, Lawrence Taylor can't say enough good things about him on the field. I mean, the dude had every move that you can imagine on Madden. He had all the X Factor abilities. If you guys know what I'm talking about, he had the fearmonger ability, the bulldozer. He had all that stuff. Like, there was nothing that he lacked, and that's why Bill Belichick still to this day holds him as the number 1 defensive guy of all time. And that team was dominant. And I think also that he made everybody around him better on that defensive line too. You didn't have to worry about him. You had to worry about everybody else because you knew he was going to get his at the end of the day. For you guys to have had him up here with the greats that have played on the Yankees, you could have put a lot of people up here, but just to be fair to one of the, if not 3 or 4 best football players of all time, you're putting him in that high regard. He definitely has to be one of the best athletes to ever come out of New York as well.
The next 2 I like to group together. But in order to do that, I have to tell you Lou Gehrig and Joe DiMaggio are just 2 of a slew of Yankees that could be on this list. Mickey Mantle, Mariano Rivera, Derek Jeter. There's so many. Yogi Berra. Yogi Berra won 7 championships. But I want to take a time to talk about what I think is one of the most underrated Yankees. Now, I know people know Lou Gehrig, and they talk about Lou Gehrig's disease and everything of that nature, but I think he was a little overshadowed by Babe Ruth. You want to talk about a guy that batted .340. He from 1926 to 1938. He played 149 or more games every season. The Iron Horse was his nickname, and I'll tell you right now, he was exactly that. 493 home runs. Not only batting .340 is absurd. Absurd. And you want to add on top of that, he had 534 doubles. Like, the guy raked. And he played a stellar first base. He wasn't a slouch there. He wasn't a Reese Hoskins.
No, he's a very good first baseman. No, I mean, you're not kidding. He sucks. But I think, again, 500 some doubles. Let's just be generous and say Same kind of thing with Babe, with the stadiums. He probably hits an additional 70 at least, if not more, if he's playing in today's game. The impressive thing for me is you look at his RBIs and runs, and not so much runs, but RBIs. He still put up crazy numbers, and that was hitting in the same lineup as some of these guys. There's only so many runs to go around. You know what I mean? I mean, you're coming up the base a lot of times. The base is empty because somebody hit a home run before you. His numbers are incredible. A lot of people know him because of the speech he gave, his retirement speech at Yankee Stadium. When he got Lou Gehrig's disease. But I don't think the big thing with him is, the Iron Horse thing was because it's a two-part nickname. He played all the time, like Gene said. The dude was just a workhorse. There's also a clip. Dante could probably find it really quick if you want to show it. There's a clip that they found or that got released last year, and it was him of Babe Ruth finishing up batting practice. And if you haven't seen it, the legend of Babe Ruth was how, he was a god among men, and he was just bigger than everybody. And, he's been, memorialized in so many movies and just almost like this, he's like this like mythical guy. You know what I mean? Lou Gehrig was bigger than Babe Ruth. That's the crazy thing. I saw this clip and I couldn't believe it when I was watching it. Lou Gehrig was a monster of a man. He was just an old, just a young, just one of those farm bred kids that you could just look at him and be like, that dude is just freakishly strong. But it was, yeah, man. I mean, this is probably it. No, I don't know if this is it or not. It might be. But you'll see if it's what I think it is, you'll see it in a second. Lou Gehrig will get in the box. He's bigger than Babe Ruth. He was just a giant man.
Oh my God.
There he is.
That's it.
Yeah.
And the last one I want to get into is Joe DiMaggio.
Joltin' Joe.
Well, let me tell you why I think Joe is so special and why he deserves to be the fourth person on this Mount Rushmore. I want to read something off to you I think is absolutely absurd. 1936 came into the league. He was an all-star. He batted 323, 125 RBIs. 346, 167. 324, 140. 381, 126. 352, 133. 357, 305. And then you know what he did in 1943? He left in the middle of his prime to go to the military and go to the war. Him and Ted Williams both did this. In the middle of their prime, left to fight in the war for the United States. Take it a step further, the guy finished with a 325 batting average. Only 2 years in his entire career did he bat under 300, and missed the middle 3 years of his prime of his career for the military. So Joe DiMaggio 100% deserves to be on this list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The crazy thing is, we kind of talked about this when we were doing it. He's not the first name that comes up. And I would say the sadder, I don't know if it's sad, but the unfortunate thing is most casual people know more about Joe DiMaggio because of Marilyn Monroe than they do of how good he was, because he wasn't as great of a player as he was. That was, even with the Marilyn Monroe stuff, he didn't like the spotlight type thing. He wasn't one of those guys. Like Babe Ruth loved it. Babe Ruth loved being around town and being just, he was one of those guys that just loved having people around him and, holding court and telling stories. Joe wasn't like that. And especially when he came back from the war, he liked his privacy, and obviously he's dating literally the most famous person on the planet. But he was a damn good baseball player, man. He gets overshadowed a lot because of just some of the guys he played with or played right after. But to your point, his numbers are kind of incomplete, just like Ted Williams. You look at his all-time ranks with some of these numbers, I don't know what they look like if he plays baseball. Like, how old was he when he left? I think he missed his 26, 27, and 28-year-old
It was his 8th, 9th, and 10th season in the league.
Okay, but how old would he have been? Are you on Baseball Reference? It'll tell you.
Let me check.
If that's what website you're on.
1914. I got it. He would have been 29, 30, and 31.
31. Okay. Yeah. I mean, don't his numbers are even crazier. Same thing as Ted Williams. Great baseball player. Just another one of the great legendary Yankees, man. Just again,
this is going to be a tough out, bro. This is going to be a tough out.
We said it
might win it all.
We said it from the get-go, man. It's New York was going to be a problem one way or the other. And the other
New York,
one,
Boston,
Boston, New York, Boston, and we really haven't touched LA yet. So
LA is huge.
It's gonna be fun. The final 16. I mean, we're getting close to getting there. When we get final 16, and we bracket these, it's gonna get heated because some of these matchups are gonna be nuts.
So let's get into You Gotta Be Kidding Me. You got a good one for me this week, shall we?
I mean, I have a good one. Unfortunately, it's just it's more of a serious one. I'm just getting tired of it, to be honest. I'm going to use the BYU fans yelling at the Black Duke volleyball player when she was out there this week. It's just one of those things I don't get. I mean, it's I am one of the people that I think you should be you buy a ticket and you go to a sporting event. You want to boo somebody, you want to yell and even talk trash as long as it's tasteful. Do it. I do it. I know Gene does it. Most sporting fans do, but this racial stuff, and I'll tell you, I think the other troubling thing is it's becoming an issue in Utah. This isn't the first time now. We've heard other NBA players have issues there. Russell Westbrook's been very outspoken about it. He's saying, he's like, I go to a lot of cities and I hear a lot of stuff. He goes, I never hear the N-word and I never hear racial stuff more than when I go to Utah. I don't know what the issue is. I mean, it's a predominantly very, very white state. But it's supposed to be a state that's very religious. It's the Mormon faith is based out of there. But my thing is this: a young woman playing college volleyball doesn't deserve to go away and have racial things yelled at her. And I think the more appalling thing is until BYU's athletic director got involved, it continued. BYU's coach was yelling. They wouldn't remove the fan until the athletic director pretty much got involved and said, if we don't get him out of here, we're stopping the match. It shouldn't take that much. As soon as they had to put an armed police officer behind the bench because they were saying physically threatening things to her. There's no this is college athletics. There's no room for it. There's no room for it in the pro ranks, let alone college. These are 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old girls. It's just appalling. It's got to stop across the board. There's just no reason for it. So for this week, Utah fans in general, you got to be kidding me.
Dante, you have one?
I do. It's probably a funny one. Actually,
I have a funny one too.
I might have two. First of all, Jaguars need to stop screwing up, man. They're messing with my heartstrings here. To get rid of Laviska Shenault, and I don't know if you guys seen the amazing catch that he made with the Carolina Panthers today. It just breaks my heart every single time that I see it. That's number one. Number two, Nebraska, I don't care what the contract says. I don't care what the relationship that you guys have with Scott Frost. I understand that he got drafted from that school. He sucked in the NFL. He sucks as a coach. Every UCF coach from this 2000 era, including Josh Heupel and all these guys. Yeah, they've turned this program around, and he was kind of the start to that. But I don't care. He's not doing that well. There should be no reason why that this guy should be tanking this franchise or this they used to be a dynasty. I don't know if you guys seen the graphic of the show last night. In the last 60 years, 55 years before the last 5 years, they had 5 national championships. They were over 700 in win percentage. They are less than 400% now with nothing to show for it. No bowl games, nothing since he's been there. It's an absolute travesty. I've said this before. When Nebraska, when Tennessee, when Michigan and when Florida State are not doing well, because those are the 4 teams that have been scrutinized over the last couple of years for not doing well. It's simply not good for college football. These are legacy teams that have just been complete garbage. So for this week in Cottrell's spot, Nebraska, you got to be kidding me with the Scott Frost thing. Get him out of there. I think his contract is up as of October 1st. Anybody can buy it out. And I hope that they buy his contract out and send him on his way before they play that game against Indiana, please.
Well, I have a funny one. It just came out today. I had another one. It wasn't as good as today was. Today, the Dallas Cowboys brought in Jason Peters to work out to see if he could play left tackle for them with the Tyron Smith injury. You got to be kidding me. Isn't towards Dallas. They need a left tackle. They called a bunch of people. You got to be kidding me. Is for Jason Peters. You know, Philadelphia wanted to send you out in the right way 4.5 years ago when you should have retired. I get the itch of still wanting to play professional football and earn money. I understand that. They gave him $9 million 3 years ago to play left tackle for us, and awful. So off the field every other play. Last year he played for Chicago and he was terrible. One of the worst left tackles in all football. He basically got the job in Chicago because Juan Castillo was the offensive line coach. You want to talk an all-time great Eagle that was going to retire an Eagle, a Hall of Famer, and now you're going to go to Dallas and work out for the Cowboys? You're ruining your legacy in the city of Philadelphia. You're ruining everything, how great of a lineman you were. And for the fact that you just can't give it up and take your one-day contract with the Philadelphia Eagles and retire the legend that you were, Jason Peters. Come on. You got to be kidding me.
He's terrible.
He's like turnstile, bro. Like,
offsides, or not offsides. False start.
100%. He's the guy that you're going to the subway, you put your quarter in, and you walk through the turnstile. That's how easy it is to get to the quarterback. Just put the quarter in, walk right through. It's an absolute joke, man. So that's all we got for this week. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
Nah, I gotta congratulate myself and Cottrell for getting Roy right on the tour championship. Mention that Honolulu won the Little League World Series. Like I picked, and they were just dominant, man. I mean, that's one of the best Little League teams I've seen in a long time.
Dude, those kids looked 18. They were huge.
Yeah, they had some big boys.
You might have a 30 for 30 with those kids. They were all like 27. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, bro. I don't believe they were 12. I'm kidding.
They're juicing.
Yeah, I just hope it's not a Danny Almonte situation. But we find out they were all 16. But yeah, I mean, it was a fun week. When college football starts this week, and then next week we get the big boys.
Cannot wait for college football this Saturday. Cannot wait.
5 days straight of college football from Thursday to Monday. And we end the week off on Monday with a very interesting matchup, regardless of how you want to slice it. I don't know if Clemson should be number 4, but, I wouldn't overlook Georgia Tech their first week. They're going to be annoying to play.
Yeah. I mean, it's the longer that game stays close, the more interesting it gets, because Georgia wants to just ground it out and slow the game down. So could be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It will be interesting. Interesting week. I get my first win tomorrow night when that low score in West Virginia Pittsburgh game happens.
That used to be a big rivalry, man. I don't know why they're not hyping that game up more. That used to mean something.
Though.
Yeah, that used to mean something. I can't believe
that over under is 50. With everything that Pitt lost, I cannot believe that over under is 53.
51.5 now.
Yeah, the sharp money's betting it down.
It's driving it down. I mean, let's not act like West Virginia is known for defense.
It was my pick. That's what it was. My pick drove the spread down 1.5.
Wow.
I'm kidding. Well, show 99, next week's show 100, and our NFL preview show. What a better time. We didn't time that any better. Show 100 and the NFL preview show.
I might have to turn all the graphics gold for next week.
I like it. Bro, shout out to Dante, East Coast Gridiron. If you're not giving them a follow, listen to them. The graphics are unbelievable. The content is great. You're not going to find many more people in this entire world that know more about college football period, than the crew over at East Coast Gridiron. So shout out to those guys. Shout out to Freddie,
Freddie,
Empire Sports Network, and I appreciate you teaming up with us, sharing us. Derek Thomas, a lot of new listeners tonight. Anthony Price, a lot of people in the chat, so I appreciate that. And download us.
Derek Thomas back from the dead.
Maybe
City.
Too soon.
Become.
Yeah, a little too soon.
Maybe too soon. Maybe.
Yeah. But with that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. Download us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher. Listen to us on YouTube. Give us a subscribe. And while you're there, subscribe to ECG also, because their shows are just as good, if not better. Thank you so much for your time. Let's have a phenomenal week this week. And let's go. Take care.
See you guys.